This is the story of two high school football players from Utah who got involved in an African coup and were sentenced to death in a military tribunal. Okay, that's not the catchiest title of all time. Maybe we'll just call it Congo Confusion or something. The young men at the center of the story are Marcel Malanga and Tyler Thompson, students of the Copper Hills High School classes of 2020 and 2021, respectively. They came to know each other through the football team, where they bonded over their similar intensity. But after high school, they went their separate ways. Marcel went to Southern Virginia University to play football, while Tyler stayed in Salt Lake City and worked as a DoorDash driver. And after his freshman year at SVU didn't work out, Marcel dropped out and returned to Utah, where he began reselling jewelry and cars through his company Coup Boys LLC. I don't really have a right to judge these guys, I'm a YouTuber for God's sake. But everything changed for them in 2024, and it all has to do with Marcel's father, Christian Malanga. When Marcel was born, his parents were both living in Utah, but his dad was originally from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That's right, those of you who know and love my dictator videos will remember my coverage of the country that was previously known as Zaire. That was still the case when Christian Malanga was born there in 1983, although the country was well on its way to collapse. When he was 10 years old, Christian and his family moved to a refugee camp in Swaziland, and 5 years later they moved to Salt Lake City as political refugees. So he grew up there, graduated high school, and eventually opened a car dealership, reportedly claiming to be the first black man to own a car dealership in Utah. Honestly, I would have believed you if you told me he was the first black man to enter Utah. At some point in this process, he met a woman named Brittany Sawyer, and the two of them had Marcel. But all was not normal in the Malanga family, as Christian was charged with a number of crimes in the early 2000s, including assault with a deadly weapon and 2 counts of domestic violence. By 2006, he decided he was done with America and returned to his home country, now renamed the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And if you remember my dictator video, you'll recall that the Democratic Republic of the Congo was not at all democratic. It wasn't even much of a republic at this point, because it was still reeling from the Second Congo War, which killed somewhere around 5.5 million people. Sounds like the perfect time to move there. A lot of cheap real estate. Christian Malanga spent a few years in the Congolese military before founding a successful mining company. But he soon clashed with the country's president, Joseph Kabila, who was extremely corrupt, just like everyone who has ever run that country. Supposedly, Christian Malanga tried to run against Kabila and spoke out against voter fraud, which resulted in the government arresting him and torturing him for 10 days. This caused Christian to develop a limp and a passionate hatred for the government of his home country. So he founded the United Congolese Party and traveled the world building support for his unsanctioned political party. But while he was on that grind set, his son was growing up without a father in Salt Lake City. Although Christian did return to the United States a few times over the years. Not to pay his outstanding child support, but just to say hello. Marcel even visited his dad in Africa a few times, where he was treated like a king due to the success of Christian's mining company. During these trips, Christian would even provide Marcel with any drugs he wanted, which must have been a lovely father-son bonding experience. Pass the pipe, Dad. Needless to say, Marcel had a complex relationship with his father. On the one hand, he hated Christian for abandoning their family and not paying child support, but on the other hand, he loved him for providing him with narcotics. So how did everything go so wrong? By 2022, Marcel was working at a construction and roofing company. I guess Coup Boys LLC was experiencing a bit of a downturn. But he and his father were cooking up some big plans. In 2023, Marcel began reaching out to his friends to see if anyone was interested in a job that would take them to Africa. And, unsurprisingly, nobody was. So Marcel started upping the incentives, eventually posting a selfie on his Snapchat story with the caption, "If you want to make 50 to 100K, message me. Warriors only." That's right, all the non-warriors in the Utah area need not apply. As I'm sure you can guess, the only one who took him up on the offer was his old high school football teammate, Tyler Thompson, who at this point was working at the same construction and roofing company as Marcel. But despite Marcel's Snapchat promise, Tyler agreed to do this for around 15 to 20K instead of 50 to 100. Gotta work on your negotiating, Ty. But regardless, they were now a team, so Marcel brought his old pal into the fold and revealed what he and his dad were planning. At this point, Christian Malanga was running what he considered to be a government in exile, based across the world and meeting in places like Brussels and Washington, D.C. He called this government New Zaire, repurposing the old flag as his own. I guess he was longing for the good old days of Mobutu, when the corruption was just as bad, but the president had a cool hat. As you can imagine, the ultimate plan was to overthrow the government of the DRC and create New Zaire. To do this, they would need weapons, which was somehow a responsibility that fell upon two American guys in their early 20s. So Marcel and Tyler went on a series of side quests to gather weaponry. First, they purchased guns from a private seller in Utah, which they would try out at a local shooting range. Then Marcel flew to Los Angeles to buy a drone. This drone was normally used for shooting video, but a week later, Marcel purchased a flamethrower attachment to go with it. Meanwhile, Tyler bought another drone with a release mechanism, planning to use it to drop bombs. To acquire these bombs, they visited a man named Pete Moser, who was an old friend of Christian Malanga's. Christian had already briefed him about the plan, with documents later revealing a text exchange in which Christian said, "In the next month, my team and I will be ready for change in DRC." To which Moser replied, "What are you talking about? The Congo Special?" Prompting the reply, "Yes, Pete, the Congo Special." For God's sake, Pete, keep your voice down about the Congo Special. Pete Moser helped the boys assemble the drones and taught them the basics of making a pipe bomb. He had gathered all the materials, including shrapnel for extra damage, and said he would ship it all to Africa for the boys to pick up. All they had to do was get gunpowder and assemble the bombs once they were there. So in April of 2024, with everything ready to go, the boys packed their bags and Tyler's mom drove them to Salt Lake Airport for a flight to South Africa. In those bags were some drones, 2 handguns, and a flamethrower. Tyler told his mom he was getting a free trip to South Africa to help Christian make drone maps of his mining operation. She later said, "I honestly thought it was going to be a great growing experience for him." All right, be safe, son. Don't forget your flamethrower. The boys flew to South Africa and actually spent 2 weeks just seeing the sights. Glad they found time to enjoy themselves before launching a coup on a foreign government. But instead of flying home to Utah afterwards, they flew to Angola and paid someone to drive them to the border of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There, Marcel reunited with his father, and they all drove to the nation's capital, Kinshasa. Tyler told his parents that he had caught malaria, and Christian agreed to extend the trip so they could get the mapping done. "All right, son, good luck with the malaria. Say hi to your friend's absentee father." In a safe house on the outskirts of Kinshasa, Christian and the boys assembled pipe bombs and finished planning the coup. With them was actually one other American, Christian's right-hand man, Benjamin Zalman Polan. Christian and Benjamin met at an international business conference in D.C. 10 years prior, and I guess they started planning some international business of their own. But still, they needed more muscle than 4 guys. Christian had already recruited a few locals, and those guys then went to a nearby village and filled a bus with random volunteers who agreed to join the cause. Probably just for money, considering that 2 of them refused to participate after Christian gave a motivational speech to the group explaining the plan. An enraged Christian allegedly stabbed one of the defectors in response, which I'm sure was a sign to everyone else that they were fighting for a good cause. To reassure the group, Christian told them that the coup was being backed by the United States. "See, look, they sent us 2 21-year-olds. Apparently, the American government also didn't send any equipment, because Christian had his group raid a nearby police station, where they stole a few AK-47s, and Christian assaulted a female officer for good measure. They also had to steal a bus from a local university after Christian's previous bus driver fled in the middle of the night. Seems like a real tight-knit squad he put together. Christian even had the men surround a civilian's Land Rover, at which point Christian shot the civilian in the head and stole his vehicle. Don't worry, it's a group bonding exercise. Finally, it was time for the action to begin. On May 19, 2024, they launched a coup that set out to kill not only the president of the DRC, but the defense minister and economic minister too. By this time, the president was Felix Tshisekedi, who was, you guessed it, also corrupt. Joseph Kabila had made a secret deal with Tshisekedi to rig the election in his favor, after several attempts by Kabila to rewrite the constitution so he could serve more terms. Yeah, this country's in great shape, guys. Anyway, the coup began with Christian and his militia showing up at the house of the defense minister at about 4:30 in the morning, only to discover that he wasn't home. Off to a great start. So they went to the economic minister's house and started firing bullets into it. 2 guards were killed in the process, but other guards were able to fight back. Tyler Thompson tried to pilot a drone into the house, but couldn't do it because it was too dark. Thanks, Ty. Glad you spent months learning how to do that. The security guards were defending the property so well that Christian decided to skip the ministers altogether and just go after the president. So they went to the Palace of the Nation, the president's residence, and stormed it. To the group's surprise, there were very few guards. So they quickly got comfortable, making themselves at home in the palace and taking to social media to announce their coup. Because if you don't post your hostile takeover, did it really happen? Benjamin started live streaming it to Facebook, which is where we get this lovely image of Christian and Marcel inside the building. Now that's one for the mantle. Christian said on the live stream, "Felix, you are out. We are coming for you." At this point, everyone was feeling great. But despite how comfortable Marcel might look in this photo, the good times did not last. Because at about 5:15 a.m., the DRC military arrived on the scene. Christian had convinced everyone that the military would lay down their arms and join the coup, strengthening the group and allowing them to take the country. Unfortunately for them, none of that happened. The military fired artillery at the palace before storming the building, which prompted most of the men in Christian's group to quickly surrender. And in a matter of minutes, the military had easily defeated the random coalition of poorly trained villagers and corn-fed Utah boys who were expecting to take over a country of 125 million people. And I'm sorry to break this news to you guys, but in the scuffle between the military and the rebels, Christian Malanga was killed. May his memory be a blessing. But in a shocking twist, Marcel Malanga, Tyler Thompson, and late series addition Benjamin Zalman Poland actually managed to escape in the chaos. They ran out of the building towards the nearby Congo River, which separates the Democratic Republic of the Congo from the neighboring Republic of the Congo. Yes, the DRC has a Wario that's somehow even less democratic than them. But despite their best efforts to escape to an even worse country, our American heroes quickly realized that the Congo River was way too dangerous to cross. All they could do was hide in the bushes and hope that the military wouldn't find them. Marcel apparently took this opportunity to snap a friend of his in Utah. Wish you were here. Might lose our streak soon, by the way. And soon enough, they were captured with the rest of the survivors. The entire coup amounted to 7 deaths, consisting of 2 security guards, 1 civilian, 3 rebels, and 1 Christian Malanga. And with his father dead, Marcel Malanga now found himself trapped in a Congolese prison cell with his old high school punt returner. Okay, that's a bit disingenuous. He took most of his reps at safety. While they were being held, the rest of the world discovered what had happened. The news of Americans being involved confused many people online, with some accusing the boys of being agents of the CIA or Mossad. In reality, they were closer to the Church of Latter-day Saints, and the people who were most shocked were Marcel and Tyler's mothers. Brittany Sawyer showed up at Tyler's mom's house and said, "I don't know how to tell you this. The boys were taken into custody. They've been beaten and they're being tortured." Oh no, and Tyler has malaria. It was 3 weeks after the failed coup that the boys were seen again, when the military tribunal against them began. They were tried alongside Benjamin and 48 other co-conspirators in a trial that took place entirely outdoors under a tarp. Because the real crime would be sitting in a courtroom all day and missing out on this lovely Congo weather. Some of the people tried weren't even involved in the coup, such as a Belgian Congolese researcher who was charged because there was one picture of him and Christian taken back in 2016. But when you're having a trial this big, you might as well toss all your political enemies in there and kill 51 birds with one stone. In the trial, our troubled Americans were charged with weapons possession, terrorism, murder, and attempted assassination. What are you guys smiling about, huh? It's not funny. Sorry, I thought these boys could use a father figure. Unsurprisingly, they all claimed that they were forced into this and that Christian woke them up at gunpoint on the morning of the coup. And knowing Christian, that honestly might be true. But the evidence of Tyler and Marcel flying to Africa with guns and a flamethrower doesn't exactly help their case. In the trial, Marcel claimed he hadn't fired a weapon since he was 5 years old, even though his Instagram had a picture of him at a shooting range with the hashtag #TrainToKill. Your Honor, that was a commentary on railroad violence. Unfortunately, the translator they provided for the boys barely spoke English, so nothing they said really mattered at all. In the end, 37 of the 51 defendants were sentenced to death, including Marcel, Tyler, and Benjamin. That researcher also got the death penalty, by the way. Shouldn't have taken that picture 8 years ago. But when all hope was lost for the boys, one lucky terrorist attack saved them. While they were appealing their death sentences, the paramilitary group M23, backed by Rwanda, invaded the DRC with an attack that killed over 3,000 people. So with the country facing a third Congo war against an enemy funded by their neighbor, they turned to the United States for help. The DRC promised the US government access to their valuable mineral deposits in exchange for some security. But when you're negotiating with another country, it's not a great look to have some of that country's citizens on death row. And in case the DRC wasn't getting the message, Adam Bowler, the US government's special envoy to hostage response, directly tweeted about it, saying, "The president of Congo is holding 3 Americans now. Perhaps it would be better if Rwanda won the war?" Which is a little bit heavy-handed, but it did get the point across. On April 8, 2025, the boys were rounded up and shipped back to the United States as a gesture of goodwill. Upon their return, they were met with triumphant cheers, given free F-150s, and hoisted onto Marco Rubio's shoulders. I'm kidding, they were arrested and sent to prison. Look, we'll get you home, but you still attempted to overthrow a foreign government. The 3 men were charged with a number of crimes, as was good old Pete Moser. You can't even purchase and ship the ingredients to construct a pipe bomb in our fascist surveillance state. All 4 of them pleaded not guilty, and they're actually still waiting for that trial to begin as of this video's release. Sorry to leave you guys in suspense, but it looks like the trial's gonna take a while, and I wanted to get this video out. So for now, our old high school teammates are back in Utah, except they're in the Weber County Correctional Facility awaiting their fate. In a recent phone call with reporter Greg Donahue, Marcel revealed that he and Tyler are still close, saying, quote, "I consider him a brother. This hasn't affected us at all. And why should it? If anything, it was a bonding experience. 2 teammates joining forces to fight for the liberation of a country they love in honor of their own heritage." Well, at least that's why Marcel was doing it. Tyler was doing it for the price of a Nissan Sentra. And even though Marcel lost his father in the process, he can always remember him through the memories they made storming the Capitol and murdering civilians. He can also remember him through Christian Malanga's Flickr account, which is still online and contains 500 photos. Wow, imagine if he put this much care into being a father. Now please consider subscribing, or I'll activate the Congo Special.